Hello again, and welcome back to COM 207 Introduction to Public Speaking. This will be the last recorded lecture, quote unquote, of the course dealing with persuasive speeches. I'll try to make this one as short as I can. Um, we will first go through the aspects of persuasive speeches, and in the end, we will do a quick review of the assignment. So for the purposes of this course, we will use Richard Perloff's definition. He defines persuasion as a symbolic process in which communicators try to convince other people to change their attitudes or behaviors regarding an issue through the transmission of a message in an atmosphere of free choice. And so your ultimate goal is to change someone's mind on a subject, to present a perspective that maybe they have not thought about. Not only is a persuasive speech created with intent, the goal is to get your audience to change their attitudes or behaviors regarding an issue. You want your audience to do something ultimately. Suppose your persuasive speech is about alternatives to bottled water. You would talk about how Americans buy an estimated 29.8 billion plastic bottles every year, and nearly 8 out of 10, every 10 bottles will end up in a landfill. The ultimate goal of your persuasive speech is to get your audience to buy and use a reusable water bottle or have some kind of alternative to a plastic water bottle. Again, your goal is to cause a potential change in audience members' behavior. That's ultimately what you're trying to do with a persuasive speech. You do want them to see another viewpoint, but ultimately you want them to act as well. Perloff suggests that individuals actually persuade themselves, and that persuasive speakers' responsibilities is to present the argument effectively so that the audience can reasonably accept, emphasis on accept, what the speaker is advocating. Right, so you can tell them all day long what they should do, but you have to present it in a logical way that shores up their reasoning and gets them to act ultimately. Let's talk about arguments and reasoning. Remember, our definition of persuasion requires intent to change an attitude or behavior through a message. That's ultimately what we're trying to do as persuasive speakers. Persuading your audience begins with your argument. An argument is a set of claims, one of which is meant to be supported by others. If you can envision your persuasive speech as an argument pyramid, quote unquote, the top of the pyramid is the goal of your persuasive speech, and the supporting claims form the base levels of your pyramid. So, for instance, if we were looking in the example here, the goal at the top of the pyramid is to persuade your audience that volunteering in the community has many benefits. So if you're saying that to your audience that it has many benefits, of course you have to lay those out as supports following the goals. So again, we can see the first layer being in the support section, networking contacts, so you can gain many networking contacts through this. You also can better your physical and mental health, and you learn new skill sets. So again, this is solidifying, supporting up the original goal that volunteering in your community gives you many benefits. So you are persuading your audience to get involved with the community because you're going to benefit from this in many ways. Arguments involve another important element of your audience, reasoning. As you speak, your audience is involved in reasoning, or the process of forming conclusions, judgments, and inferences from facts that you present. This means that your audience is mentally evaluating your argument pyramid as you present your speech, and audience members are also trying to decide if the goal is adequate based on the support. In other words, your audience has evaluated your ethos, your argument or logic, and your emotional appeal, and they're trying to see if this is sufficient enough to support the goals in your speech. However, not all persuasive reasoning happens easily, and the speaker's inferences may get sidetracked. Fallacies are what causes inferences to be sidetracked. Let's put a definition to fallacies. Fallacies are false reasonings that occur when someone attempts to persuade without adequate evidence or with arguments that are irrelevant or inappropriate. And this happens quite a lot where you get people to trying to convince you of different things, but they're not supporting you with solid facts or evidence. And this is something that you have to try your best to um, avoid. For example, this is just one of many examples. Hasty generalizations, and a lot of us suffer from this whenever we're trying to persuade people to do things, um, which is a jumping to conclusion based on insufficient evidence. For example, you may see a statement in a persuasive speech similar to this. Throughout American history, military leaders have always made has always made excellent presidents. Look at look at the examples of George Washington, Andrew Jackson, and Dwight Eisenhower. This is not a solid fact. This can be argued. There are many great presidents, we can argue, that were not military leaders. So, again, this is a sweeping generalization that we want to try to avoid. Also, ad hominem. Ad hominem, by definition, is attacking a person rather than dealing with the real issue. This happens quite a lot in debate, where someone's character will be attacked versus dealing with the actual issue on the table. For example, the head of the Commerce Commission has a number of interesting economic proposals, but let's not forget that she comes from a very wealthy family. Okay, so um, you can see where there's an attack on the person's character, whereas we should be dealing with the specific proposals that they're putting on the table. There's also either or, forcing choice between two alternatives when more than two exist. A lot of issues aren't black and white. Um, there might be many different solutions to an issue that need to be addressed. For example, the government must either raise taxes or eliminate services for the poor. And of course, looking at that statement, you probably could come up with many different ways that issues like this could be addressed versus just that two solution setup. So please make sure that you're avoiding this as well in your speeches. Another fallacy could be an appeal to tradition, which is assuming something old is automatically better than the new. For example, I don't see any reason to abolish the electoral college. It has been around since the adoption of the United States Constitution in 1787, and we should keep it as long as the United States continues to exist. Of course, there are many people that argue against that. Um, so again, just try to, when you're coming up with your arguments, go with facts, go with solid facts, do your research, and don't just fall prey to these several fallacies here when you're building your case within your speech. Be wary of logical fallacies in your persuasive speeches, as they can prevent your persuasive message from being accepted by your audience. Now let's go into Monroe's motivated sequence. Monroe's motivated sequence is a technique for organizing persuasive speeches that inspire people to take action. It was developed in the mid 1930s by Alan H. Monroe at Purdue University. Up to now, we've used a general outline structure for our speeches. For our persuasive speeches, however, we will use Monroe's for reasons that will become apparent as we go along in our upcoming slides. Let's take in this quote from Alan Moore. Although individuals may vary to some extent, research has shown that most people seek consistency or balance amongst their cognitions. When confronted with a problem that disturbs their normal orientation, they look for a solution. When they feel a want or need, they search for a way to satisfy. In short, when anything throws them into a condition of disorganization or dissonance, they are motivated to adjust their cognitions or values or to alter their behavior so as to achieve a new state of balance. So the motivative sequence derives its name from the fact that by following the normal processes of human thinking, it motivates an audience to respond affirmatively to the speaker's purpose. Let's break down all of this into 5 steps. The 5 steps are the attention step, the need step, the satisfaction step, the visualization step, and the action step. So let's break down the very first step we discussed, gaining attention. In order to gain favorable attention, one or more of the following are recommended. Most of these are the same techniques we use in the introduction of your informative speeches. You want to relate to the audience, show the importance of the topic. You can tell a dramatic story that's a good intro into the speech. You can pose a question. Have arouse curiosity or suspense. You can use a quotation relevant to your topic. So you see, a lot of these are similar to all the other attention gaining steps that we talked about in our previous speeches. Step 2 is expressing the need. You need to give a clear, concise statement of the need or the problem. So again, this is kind of part of setting up your thesis, the main reason why you're trying to persuade them to go the route that you're wanting them to go. You can give one or more detailed examples which illustrate the need. And you can back up with statistical data, but don't try to overwhelm your audience with too much data up front. You also can give testimony and other form of support to show the extent of the need. So again, all of these statements are expressing the need, building the case for why you want them to ultimately take action. By following these steps, we make the audience feel a need for change. You need to show your audience that there is a serious problem with the current situation. You're also making a convincing demonstration of how the need directly affects your audience. That could be their health, their happiness, security, or any other interest that you think will connect with the audience. You're also priming your audience to hear your solution. When you express all of these needs, like Monroe has mentioned, your audience is automatically going to want to be told, how do we solve this? What is the solution to all this? So again, you're priming your audience to get ready for whatever solution you've researched. And after arousing that need, or arousing the need within the audience, you can satisfy it by providing a solution to the problem. So step 3 is the satisfaction or the solution. In it, you briefly state the action or the change you wish your audience to adopt. You can give a theoretical demonstration or show how this action logically meets the problem. You can give an actual example showing that the plan has worked effectively, of course. It's always good to have the quote-unquote proof in the pudding, as it were. And use facts, figures, and the testimony of experts to show your claims/plan. And this is probably the most important part. You can't convince your audience to follow this solution if not backed up with solid numbers or facts or showcasing that this has worked in the past, or this is a logical solution to the problem. Step 4, visualization. So make your audience visualize how much better the conditions will be once that plan is adopted or once your solution is adopted. Right? You have to. We're visual learners. A lot of us are visual learners, and so we need examples. We need to see how this is how this could be tangible, how this could work. The visualization step may be developed using one of the following techniques. The positive method. Provide vivid, concrete description of the audience rather, actually enjoying the conditions which acceptance of your plan will produce. So again, we are trying to ultimately convince your audience to change their behavior, right? So you have to reinforce it by showing them exactly how they can benefit from this. What positive things will this add to the audience's life? You can use the negative method. Provide vivid, concrete description of the most undesirable aspects of the present situation and show how these conditions will continue if your proposal is rejected, right? So the old fire and brimstone method, right? If you don't do X action, whatever it is, then you will benefit in negative ways, and these are those ways. In the contrast method, a combination of both positive and negative approaches, which is used quite often. And in fact, I believe that this method showcases a well balanced presentation, gives your audience much more information to chew on, right? So you can see both the positives and the negatives. Step 5, you want them to take action, right? That's the whole reason why we are presenting this persuasive speech. Ultimately, you want them to take action. In this step, you want to translate the desire created in the visualization step into overt action. So at this point, you can make a call to action. Tell your audience exactly what you want them to do now and exactly how to do it. For example, if your persuasive speech is about persuading your audience to donate more blood, you can tell them where to go on campus to do it. You can tell them where in your community to do it, who you need to contact to make that happen, so on and so forth. If you want to change something in legislation, you can give your audience the address, the state representative they can write to, or their phone number, or their contact information. So again, you're setting up how the person, your audience, can take action after persuading them to do so. And of course, like with any speech, you need a solid conclusion. You must conclude with a final stirring appeal that reinforces your audience's commitment to act now, right? And so again, this is similar to our regular outline. Typically in your conclusion, you'll summarize your main points, reminding our audience of why they were here in the first place, why they've been sitting through this persuasive speech, what are the points within our speech, just reminding them of that. You restate your thesis, and then you give your audience a memorable closing statement. So again, this is similar to what we've done in our other outlines. A final statement might be, I challenge each and every one of you to commit one act a day that is about someone other than yourself. See how bright the world becomes when it's not all about you. So again, we're not just saying I'm done and then walking away from the podium. You give them something to chew on. You give them something that's solid that refers to what you've been talking about in the speech and gives them a nice punctuation to your speech. So all the steps that we've talked about look like this. This is an example of the Monroe method sequence, the formal outline, and this is your template to your outline that you'll be submitting before you give your speech. You can see this inside of the instructions within Moodle. And let's go ahead and take a look at that now. So I'm currently in Moodle, in our Moodle classroom, and if you go underneath speech assignments, you'll see that we have our persuasive speech section, and click into there. And I'll just run through some of the details here. Your outlines are due July 2nd, so you can upload that to the Moodle assignment section here. And we will be giving our persuasive speeches July 6th and July 7th. And I will let you guys know, as I told you in class, what day you will be presenting on. Once you get that list, just know that the list does not represent the speech order. That will be a randomized list. So just be prepared to give your speech at any time during your assigned day. Speeches will start on both days at 11:30 a.m. class time. Let me go through some of the instructions here. If you look, you can see that the speech instructions have a link just like we've had in the previous speech assignments. So if I click here, it'll bring you to the assignment instructions. I won't read everything verbatim, but basically you will be giving a speech on a specific topic of your choosing. What I'll do is I'll give some examples of persuasive speech topics. You don't have to pick any of those, but it'll just be there for your reference. Speeches will be 6 to 7 minutes. Same point deduction scale that I've told you about in previous speeches here. You will be responsible for citing aloud three expert sources within your speech, and they need to be credible sources, not anything from Wikipedia or any other non-reputable sources, about.com, stuff like that. You need to have a works cited page that's separate from the outline that showcases those three sources that you'll cite verbally in your speech. You can have presentation aids like a slideshow if you'd like. I'll give you guys the ability to showcase those visual aids within the Zoom setting. You can use 3x5 index cards to write down your speaking outline. Perfectly fine, like we've done in previous speeches. I also have within the instructions an example of how to craft a thesis statement, or at least an example of one. Remember to have transitions, clear transitions within your speech. There's also an example of how to say an oral citation right here, and also examples of your works cited page, how to format those specific citations within your works cited page. Remember, if you're having more than one line for that cite, that you indent the second line as you see here. And this is all using MLA style. On the final page, there's the outline that we've been discussing, the Monroe motivated sequence outline, which breaks down each section here. In the introduction, you're going to have a hook, or which can consist of a story, a fact, a quote, etc. You preview your subject, showcase why it's relevant, why the audience should care, um, give your credibility or your credentials, why people should be listening to you, and then you have your thesis. From there, you transition into the body, which consists of the need step, the satisfaction step, the visualization step, and the action step that we discussed. And also, of course, at the end, you'll transition into your conclusion. This is where you'll summarize your main points again. You'll restate the thesis, and you give us a memorable closing statement. Remember that your audience members need to be reminded periodically of what they're listening, of the facts of your speech, and what they should take away from your speech. We'll finish up with looking at a few examples here. I have several example speeches, persuasive example speeches logged here. I highly suggest you look them over, especially when you're researching how to deliver your speech. There are some great examples here of how not only to organize your speech clearly, but also how to deliver your speech clearly. And I won't play any of them here, but just know that they're linked within the assignment page. All right, and that will end this lecture slash explanation of your final speech assignment. If you have any questions, as always, just be sure that you ask. Send me an email, get in touch with me, and I will answer your question to the best of my ability. Make sure that you are aware of the deadlines. They're all labeled in the class schedule, and I will see you on speech day.